Hello! I bet you're surprised to see one of these all of a sudden. It's been a while since I did one of the Sims 4 to the Sims 2 conversion builds, but I wanted to revive this series because I think there's still a lot that I can learn from the Sims 4 builders, and I found this gorgeous build done by SimLicy's, and I really wanted to try to remake this, mostly because I really thought that the terrain use in this build was really interesting. It has several tiers of levels for the terrain, and that is something that I definitely want to try to get better at, utilizing the terrain tool a lot more in my builds to incorporate more of that into the, well, mainly the garden, I guess, but somehow also into the builds. And this was a really cool building that I wanted to try to remake to the best of my ability. And sort of challenge myself as well to see what I could do in The Sims 2 and using the tools that we have available in that game. So I knew from the start that the biggest challenge would be the sides of the house, because I mean, they look amazing in The Sims 4. It looks exactly like an old cottage, but the only way that I could figure out to recreate that in The Sims 2 was abusing the constrained floor elevation cheat, and that is what you see me do right now. So what I actually ended up doing was lowering this wall on top to 4 clicks high, and then little by little leveling it upwards. And I started out trying with 2 clicks up, but that was a little bit too low, so I ended up going with 3 clicks instead, and I think that elevation was pretty much spot on in terms of the angle that I wanted. It worked quite alright. It got the right look to it, but it wasn't as smooth as it looked in The Sims 4. But yeah, definitely something that can be done. The floor tiles looked a little bit wonky at the back of the house, but I mean at the front it looks pretty good. It could definitely pass for the same style anyway. And definitely when I put on those half walls, the look came together pretty good. So yeah, I was happy with the result in the end. And then there were these, one could say that the layout of the house was a little bit complex, because something that I noticed is possible in The Sims 4, which is not possible in The Sims 2, is that you can have the entrance be at ground level, but then there's also a foundation poking up here and there on the house, and I think it's like ties together with like lowering the terrain around the house, and it just automatically creates a foundation for it somehow. Of course, that's not possible in The Sims 2, because if you want to put in a foundation, then you can't have the entrance be at ground level, unfortunately. I mean, that would be amazing, but that's just not possible. So I had to work a little bit around that limitation. And you also saw me mess around a little bit with the sort of outcroppings around there. They were sort of glassed just sections of the house, and I contemplated using just greenhouse walls. I have these really nice ones from Cricket's Feverfew neighborhood that I attempted to use first, but that it just messed up the lighting indoors, so I ended up scrapping that idea in the end. And here I'm attempting a few things to also fix the sort of, I suppose, drive-through entrance. It's very slim of an opening, but you're supposed to be able to get a car through that opening there. So it had to be pretty wide as I could make it anyway, and still make it look similar to the build. So I ended up going with just columns on OMSPs, just 90-degree angles ones that I could mess around with. And then this was a funny thing, but it turned out that one could say that roofs work a little bit different in these games too, because The Sims 2 always has this pretty low roof that sort of goes out over the edge of the wall and covers up a little bit of like the the door and everything. So I was contemplating putting in like a stage to put the roof on, but then I remembered that no, of course I can't put roofs on stages because that just doesn't work. So the only option I would have had would have been to create a sort of half wall with a constrained floor elevation sheet again, but then that would have messed up the wall to the house itself. So yeah, I wasn't very fond of that idea. I suppose one solution could have been to sort of make a mock floor in between the levels, but then that would also have messed up the staircase as well. So, I mean, you have to have all of these little details in mind when you create something like this to make sure that the dimensions are as close as possible. So I think that going with a roof that looks more like this is a better option in this situation. So here I'm starting on the slope that leads up to the opening, and again, it's supposed to be like a drivable path, and you're supposed to be able to drive through that little building. So yeah, the slope had to be, it had to be pretty steep. In total, the clicks up ended up being, 12. Yeah, because the mid-tier is 8 clicks high, and then the one below it is 4. Yeah, that's how it was. So yeah, it became pretty steep, but that was the look I was going for, so it turned out well. Try to find the perfect fences for this. In SimLicy's video, it was actually 2 different kinds of fences. One that was entirely white, and then one that was more like a traditional stone fence, I think. And I didn't end up having that many white fences, surprisingly. I had a lot of nice fences that would have fit in other colors, but yeah, white turned out to be a challenge, actually. So I just went with one that was in the same color. Yeah, and here I'm working a little bit with figuring out where the staircase down to the sort of garden part of this is going to go. And yeah, I started to try to have it as close as possible to the house, but unfortunately that messed up the walls of the building. It could have worked somewhat if I would have just had the issue with like the part of the wall that you can see right now facing the staircases, but then it also lowered the part that's connected to the column and made a hole in it. That just was a no-go for me. So yeah, I pushed the staircases 1 tile in instead, and yeah, that worked fine. I think it looks basically the same anyway. And then we have this little nice, I suppose it's sort of like a garage, and it's supposed to be like you can see the foundation. So I had to like compromise and put it on the slope. I was thinking about trying to figure out something with a foundation, but it's just impossible to make it on the foundation and then also on ground level because they're different levels, really. So yeah, I had to do it like that. And then when putting in this fence, of course, I also struggled a bit because I couldn't get it to connect to the house wall. So I cheated a little bit and put in one of the nooks and niches walls in there to sort of make it look a bit like it connects. And I actually had to put them on below ground OMSPs as well. So yeah, a little bit of fiddling, but I think that in the end it turned out quite nice. I was lucky and it had the correct color, so they matched perfectly together. Otherwise I think it would have been impossible to do that. Right, so these are the sort of glassed outcroppings that I was talking about, and I mean, I really love the look of this. I think that is something that I should definitely try to use more in my own builds, these kinds of details, because it makes it look so much like a real house, I suppose, to have these little details. It looks really fancy, but I mean, I suppose this is what you would see in a sort of village type cottage house somehow. So yeah, I should definitely try to to do things like that a bit more. Yeah, some nice windows. I really appreciate the detail to put the larger windows on the ground floor and then the smaller windows on the upper level. That is something that I do a lot myself, because I think that is something that you really see a lot in real houses. That you wouldn't really have windows that go all the way down to the floor on the upper level, but you would have a lot of that on the ground level. So yeah, I really appreciated that detail was there as well. And some of the windows I had to fiddle around a little bit with to make actually see through, because if you have a piece of roof that just sticks up like that against the wall, the windows don't really want to sit there comfortably. So I actually had to do that little trick where I remove the wall and then put down the windows and then add the wall back again, and that allowed me to actually put them in. And this was also a bit interesting in layout terms, because it was just open space. So the only way I could solve that was put in archways, just open to the weather outside. So yeah, and here I started to try to work around a nice like 2x2 tile staircase using the constrained floor elevation sheet again. And I mean, so far it's looking quite nice. I had in my head that this would be pretty much perfect for this space, that I would be able to just put in that and have it look almost exactly like it did in The Sims 4. But then, of course, when I started to put in the floors on the upper level, I sort of looked at it and went, oh no, what have I done? So yeah, of course, when you use the constrained floor elevation sheet, you are a bit limited with how many tiles you can use around that section. So yeah, no, I couldn't use that. So I had to make this one of these compromises with the game. And I think it worked out fine. This room wasn't really used for much anyway. It's more sort of like a hallway type of thing. So it wasn't that big a deal that the staircase ended up being one tile longer in this case. And obviously on the ground floor, it's also one tile shorter. So it's just one of these staircases that I really like using myself. Just put in a stage and then put in like a 4 clicks high staircase leading up to it, and then the sim can pivot and then walk all the way up using the longer piece of stairs. Yeah, and that turned out all right. It doesn't look exactly the same, but it looks pretty good in my opinion. All right, so then we have this very open sort of veranda part, I guess. And it's really unique. I have never seen anything like this before, I think, in any of the builds I've seen, either in The Sims 4 or The Sims 2. So I really, really enjoyed this part of the house. And I wasn't completely pleased with those open archways. They just looked so... in The Sims 4 they had this really nice decorative parts to them, but I just had these plain ones, so I end up switching them out a little bit later to make them look a bit better. There's a lot of muted colors in this build, and I really like it for this. I really enjoy these kinds of grayish, greenish and bluish tones. I'm not one for really, really bright colors, so I really appreciated the color scheme of this house. And it has this sort of like gravel stone floor in all of the, in both of the bathrooms as well as the kitchen. And that is something that I have noticed quite a lot, that especially the Sims 4 players tend to use the same sort of tile and floor in all of the bathrooms, and in some cases like this in the kitchen as well, which, to me it doesn't look like it's very realistic that it would be used like that. But it looks very unified, I guess. It looks like it all ties together. So it looks really good in photos. Okay, and this is what I was talking about with the doors. So in order to make it look at least a little bit better, I put in these other arches. So the first ones were 3 tiles wide, and the second ones were 2 tiles wide, and they sort of created this illusion of screen doors. So at least now I can extend the imagination that they can actually close these open doorways come winter to make sure that the house doesn't get too cold, I suppose. So yeah, that looked a lot better to me, and it looked a lot more similar to the way it looked in The Sims 4, so I was happy about that. Yeah, and then I'm moving in with the greens, and yeah, of course, just adding these changes the entire feel of the building, and it makes it look so much more lively and nice, I suppose. Just putting in these trees and the bushes, and yeah, I really enjoyed the looks of this. It just makes the whole silhouette come together. And there were actually not that much repeated greenery, I feel like. It was very, like, every piece of the garden was very unique looking, and that is something that I appreciated as well. It had this little part where it was just a little piece of land that was elevated at the back with these bushes that looked really nice, just to sort of screen off the lot from everything else around it. And yeah, of course, these rocks at the back. I am not a huge fan of this. I've noticed that this is something that is sort of a staple thing in The Sims 4, that they tend to use around buildings sometimes. For this kind of house, I think it's a bit much. I don't think I would use it like this much for this kind of build, at least not in this kind of town where it's just like for me it's just plain grass everywhere, and in The Sims 4 it was just like in the middle of a town, I think. But maybe in somewhere like on the cliff, like against the ocean or something like that, would look nice if it made sense with the terrain. But yeah, I think I would have maybe used it for a small section, like around this little house. It might look good. But yeah, it just became too much stone for me, my taste anyway. Right, and putting in some nice greenery in this part as well, and this little like garden where you walk down the stairs and then you come into this little nice enclosed area. Yeah, I really love the looks of this. That is something that I definitely want to try to use a bit more in my own gameplay as well. These kinds of little thought out places that are almost like rooms, but in outside, I suppose. It looks so nice, and it's really like you can just walk down these stairs and get to this little oasis almost. So yeah, really appreciated that. And a lot of unique colors down here as well. Looking at the after photos, it turns out that there were a few trees that I missed initially, but I added those at the end as well. So this little part just had a sitting area, basically. So it was just a sofa and a few chairs and just somewhere to hang out, I suppose, in the summer, and just sit and enjoy the shade. And I used these little object rotators that allow you to just rotate objects by increments that I really enjoy. I saw it in one of Tea Addict's videos and just had to get it for myself as well because it's just a genius object, really. You can do so much more with it, and apparently the Sims can just sit fine in this furniture as well. So yeah, really genius creator that created those. And here begins my my fight with the pillows. There were so many pillows in this build. You'll see later, definitely. This is just the beginning. Right. So there was a rug for some reason in this part of the garden as well, so I ended up going with something that looked a bit more like, how should I call it, like bamboo or something. That made sense to have it, but I don't think I would put down a rug on plain grass like that. Maybe if it were more like a patio area kind of thing, but yeah, it looks nice anyway. Again, I think it's more visual probably. And I decided to start out with the kitchen because I thought that the kitchen especially was really, really cool looking in this building, and I was excited to start on like the shelving and things. But I started out and ran into trouble at once because there were these nice curtains in the corners of these windows, and well, I didn't have anything like that really. So I ended up trying out these sort of columns with fabric on it, but the issue then was that if I just put it and hid away the columns inside the wall, then the curtains would just be inside of the glass, and that just looked odd. So I ended up going with these sort of put away curtains, or what to say, like corner pieces that ended up looking quite nice. I'm not a huge fan of using curtains sort of like in combination with these kinds of furniture because it just looks like they are going through the furniture. I suppose in this case it looks alright because you could just imagine that the curtains end there. But yeah, in general, I prefer not to have things cut through each other if I can avoid it, at least when it's visual like that. Yeah, but I was really excited to try this out because, I put in this shelving unit inside of the counter to create this really unique looking thing that I became very fond of really quickly. And I really love the looks of this. This is definitely something that I want to bring with me into my own gameplay if I can, to do something similar. I definitely want to try to utilize these shelves a lot more than I already have. And turns out to have an island counter as well, like in the middle of it all, and things became pretty cramped, I must say. I tried out at first to put it a little bit closer to the wall, but then I realized that, oh my god, I had to put in a refrigerator there as well. So yeah, it ended up going back again. I was really, really concerned at this point about the routing because I wasn't sure about how the Sims would move around this furniture. Even using the like quarter tile placement sheet, it just it looked so cramped, and I wasn't sure how the Sims would react with it. But I mean, spoiler, but I I actually ended up playtesting this lot later while I was taking the screenshots, and it turns out that this layout actually worked perfectly. So I really had no reason to be cautious about it. The Sims just could work around with it completely fine. The refrigerator, the stove, the sink, and even I am going to put in a dishwasher later as well, and that also worked perfectly, so I was really happy about that. I ended up having to switch out the windows though, because the ones that I had used previously were just too thick. They just looked really, really odd combined with these counters. So yeah, I just put in a few that were a lot more flat. And I also switched out the doors a little bit just so that I could comfortably use this little breakfast table in the corner and have two actually workable chairs. If I would have had a double door there, partly the door would have continuously stuck open, so that would have been annoying. And the second chair wouldn't have been usable either. So yeah, I really preferred this solution to the other things. However, I must say that, gameplay-wise, having these kinds of breakfast tables, even though they look amazing and look like something that you would see in real life, the Sims will just use those all the time. So I'm not too fond of them in general, just because of like gameplay, really. You could have them just be like decorative, I suppose, somehow. But yeah, when I play tested this lot, of course, that was the table that the sim ended up sitting at eating. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind if you want to make a kitchen like this. So yeah, here I'm just taking out all of the clutter that's going to go into the shelves. And yeah, actually, I forgot to mention, but the island counter in the middle ended up being a lot too wide, just having it normally put together with 2 tiles. So I squished them together and I think they became in total like 1.5 at the end. And that actually also turned out to work perfectly. The sim could use the counter to chop vegetables as well when she prepared her dinner. So yeah, again, the game keeps surprising me with all of those things that you can just mess around with. Yeah, and here I'm putting in the stuff on the shelves, and I ended up going with some of the decorations that were supposed to be on the counter actually on the shelf instead. And the reason for that being that, well, I had one more shelf than SimLicy had in her video, so it all just had to be like leveled up one spot, one could say. And of course, I have to use different kinds of OMSPs on different levels in order to make the items actually sit properly on the shelves as well. So that was a little bit fiddly, but of course it can be properly done with a little bit of time investment. So yeah, I had these nice things that actually were the exact correct things, even a basket full of lemons. So I was pretty happy about that. But then it turned out that I didn't have a rack of dishes that were supposed to be on the side, so I ended up just putting in some kitchen clutter there. So that is something that my catalog of custom content is definitely lacking. That is something that's sort of a staple in any kitchen, really, so I should really try to find something like that after this to put into my folders, because yeah, that's just something that you would see in houses really everywhere, and it just makes sense to have it. But yeah, I ended up being able to find the paper towels anyway, and I was pretty happy about that. I looked forever for them, and in the end it turned out that they were in appliances. Of course, where else, right? Alright, so moving on to the chimney. So this was a little bit disappointing, because, well, of course, building a roof like that, the chimney is supposed to go in those little half walls, right? And that's where it's supposed to be poking up. But I mean, the position of the fireplace needed to be where I put it, because otherwise the room wouldn't have looked nice and it would have messed up the windows and all kinds of things. And also, when I put in the fireplace and the chimney, it just created this large hole in the whole thing. And I think it is because I had used the constrained floor elevation sheet to make that little custom roof part. Yeah, so I couldn't stand to just have it be a large hole there, so I just patched it together with some nooks and niches stuff, but yeah, it doesn't look great. I wasn't completely happy with that, but yeah, at least it's not like looking like it's glitched out. It just looked like it's poor building. Oh well, you can't solve everything perfectly, I suppose. Alright, so moving on to the living room. And this is also a really, really beautiful room, and also actually it looks like a real house, I suppose, well, in my opinion, when it has all these things. And again, it looks really unique and cool with this little open entrance way that's sort of like a veranda thing, in combination with these huge windows. It just brings in so much light, and I mean, this is nothing that I would have thought to try to create if I hadn't tried to recreate this beautiful building from The Sims 4. If I had just try to come up with it myself. So that's one of the reasons why I want to do this these kinds of builds, to learn these kinds of things and try to improve as a builder. And yeah, I mean, this living room is definitely something to take inspiration from. I think it's gorgeous. So I didn't really have a sofa that had well, that looked correct in the back, so I ended up going with these modular ones, and that they actually turned out to look really nice. These animations when the Sims sit in them is a little bit different from normal sofas though, because it's like sectional instead, so they sort of slide to the side here and there to use them, but I mean, that's fine. It's just that sometimes they clip through the sofas a little bit, because the sofas are pretty big in comparison to the Sims. So they're not perfect, but I mean, just using them like this in a build, they look really, really gorgeous. And they have these pillows already in them, so yay for not having to put in that many pillows. You just wait, there'll be more. Oh, the pillows. I was so upset about the pillows at the end. Alright, so yeah, here I'm trying to find the perfect side table, and yeah, it had to be pretty wide, but it also had to be pretty low, and it shouldn't look too big, and I wasn't happy with the swatches. So it took me forever to find this one, but yeah, I think this one worked pretty nicely. It's sort of the perfect height, the perfect width, and yeah, I was happy with that. And this part was actually pretty fun, because I really enjoy this mixing and matching of the paintings, and sort of putting them together with each other like Tetris on the walls. It's one of my favorite things to do when I build, and yeah, I think this turned out to look really, really nice. Unfortunately, there were a few struggles, one could say, because I also needed to have like a leaning frame on the table itself, which I mean, that looks really, really good. I love the looks of that. But the thing is that the only one that I have that looks similar to that is actually pretty big. So you'll see it now, and it just covers up everything on that wall. So yeah, no. And when you just put it on the table itself, it doesn't lean properly against the wall, so I actually had to put it on an OMSP. So yeah, in the end I had to just yeet one of the paintings out of the picture and just go with this solution. So I think it looks really nice in the end, but yeah, I couldn't get it to look exactly like it did in The Sims 4. I try my best to recreate the things as similar as possible, but yeah, often you just have to compromise with things like this. So yeah, this is the dining table that the Sims are supposed to be using when they are eating, and I really like the position of this as well, and I actually also appreciate that they have one clear dining table where they're supposed to sit and eat, because sometimes with some of the houses that I have recreated, there are several dining tables and dining areas. I think that in one of the buildings there were like 3 or 4, so it wasn't clear cut where they were supposed to sit and eat. But in this house it's actually really, really clear that this is the room where they are supposed to eat dinner, so yeah, I like that. So yeah, this staircase was actually completely enclosed with walls in The Sims 4, so I tried to make that work at first, but for some reason the short staircase didn't want to take to the sort of outcropping tool properly, so I had to scrap that. But yeah, I could work with the 3-tile long wall anyway, so that made it look different. I'm not sure which one I prefer actually. I really like having that open space beneath the staircases, because you can fit so much things in there, and you can really utilize that space for something. But again, it looks really clean and nice this way as well, so I wasn't too upset about it. I was a little bit upset about this corner though, because this was one of those cases where I was I suppose, looking too early in the video, and then had the wrong idea about what to put there, and then I had to go back and redo it. And then when I tried to put in the chair, I realized that, oh my god, it's covering up the entire archway, so the Sims won't be able to go through properly. So yeah, I ended up having to compromise again and create this like with a smaller archway, and I think that actually looks pretty nice, so I was fine with that. But it's one of those cases when you don't know really if you are supposed to look at the after pictures or as you go through the video, because you get this really constrained and difficult to see the whole pictures images at the end, where of course you see the finished product, but you can't really see all of the angles. But then if you try to look in the video itself as it's being built, it's also object to change. So yeah, I'm not sure exactly how to best go about it, to be honest. So I suppose that's just part of the challenge of this. Speaking of challenges, you have met my nemesis, the pillows, again. I was so upset about these pillows. I was like, at this point, who needs these many pillows? But yeah, thankfully I had this like long sections of pillows stacked together, so I could make that work. Yeah, and this table actually in The Sims 4 is put on a how do I describe it? It's twisted to the side, so the chairs are actually standing diagonal. And I think that in The Sims 4 you can actually use the table like that still, because the chairs are sort of connected to the table. A little bit like how the poker table works, I think, in The Sims 2. But yeah, of course, for normal tables you can't really do that and still have the table be usable. So yeah, I had to compromise again. And yeah, I went up to the first floor and saw that this shelf was actually poking through the floor, unfortunately. So I had to lower it a little bit and yeah, mess around with the OMSPs again. But it worked out pretty easily. I just had to sort of lower everything one click, so it wasn't too difficult. Again, using the object rotators for these chairs, it makes it look really nice, I think. A little bit more like actually lived in. And the fact that the Sims can still use the chairs is sort of what makes it for me. Otherwise, I don't think I would have used them as much, because I like things to be usable still. Right, so we're getting up to the first floor, and as I mentioned, I had to make the staircase one tile longer, so it takes up one more tile upstairs, so it doesn't look exactly the same in terms of layout, but pretty close, I think. And yeah, taking out the swatches for the piano, I sort of realized that I must have removed some of the swatches somewhere down the line, because I had really few to work with all of a sudden, so I couldn't get that sort of nice pale wooden color for it. But I think that this one worked out fine. But that is something that I think I had to go on a CC hunt for as well. More recolors. That's really the thing that you need the most, I think. Recolors. Those are so important. Just so that you can mix and match so much. And I mean, every recolor basically creates a new piece of furniture almost. Something that you can, yeah, use in different buildings and still not have look like every building looks the same, if that makes sense. Right, so we have a nice shelf here with some decorative stuff on it, so I enjoyed putting that together. That is something that I should really try to use more as well. I mean, if you just look at the rooms on this upper floor, it's really just, I mean, 2 bathrooms and 2 bedrooms, and then 2 practically unusable rooms. It's just 2 hallways, really, with some sitting furniture in and a piano. So that is something that I don't think I would have even had a thought to create myself. but it's something that you see in real buildings, I think. These little odd rooms that just are traveling space in between other rooms. But I think that probably from playing the game so much, I have learned to try to utilize the space as efficiently as possible in terms of rooms. But that might actually not be the best way to go about it. It will actually create these really interesting spaces if you try to be completely efficient with the rooms, but you actually try to create these. I'm not even sure what to call them, but use more of these little odd rooms that aren't really used for anything other than traveling space and the decoration. Because yeah, that's something that you would see actually in real houses. At least in some places. So yeah, I really like the looks of this, but it feels a little bit unnatural to put in this many armchairs. I don't think I've ever been in a house that has this many sitting areas, but I'm not sure what else to put in those kinds of rooms, really. That's maybe like storage things, like cabinets and things, maybe. I suppose plants and bookshelves, maybe, those kinds of things. But yeah, I have a hard time seeing people just sit around and enjoy a good book in those kinds of rooms. They would probably go downstairs to the living room to do it. Alright, so this is the master bedroom, and I'm putting in some just decorative bedding on here to make the bed look a little bit more like dimensional, I suppose. Just to make it look more like it's actually being used. And yeah, I just used a normal like walk-in closet kind of thing that came with apartment life, I'm pretty sure. Just because I really like that function of it. But I think that yeah, I could have also made a sort of similar solution that SimLicy had used in the Sims 4 build. It was just sort of an open archway with small doors, and then you could see right into it, and then it was, I think, just decorative clothes hangings things. And yeah, this was one of the biggest compromises I had to make, I think, because this room was supposed to have a fireplace where that big wardrobe is. Yeah, if I would have done that, I would have created this huge chimney, like smack in the middle of the roof, and that would have just destroyed the entire silhouette of the house. Yeah, I wasn't entirely happy about putting in that fireplace on the ground floor because it didn't line up, but I mean, that was, in comparison, it was fine. Compared to if I would have put in that, yeah, that huge chimney in the middle of it. So yeah, I just went nope. And put in the wardrobe instead. So yeah, there's a lot of storage things in that bedroom, but I mean, I think that's pretty realistic in a way. Alright, so this bathroom looks really beautiful. I'm not sure I like the idea of having, like, how do I describe it? So when you go into this room in The Sims 4, it's just sort of an open archway, and it sort of kind of looks like there's double doors that you're supposed to be able to shut, but still it looks extremely open, and I think that those doors were also like glass doors. So at first I tried to put in like a normal archway that was just completely open, and that looked so wrong for a bathroom. So I ended up going with another compromise and put in these glass double doors. At least you can shut them. But yeah, it brings in a lot of light, sure. But I'm not fond of this idea. I couldn't imagine sitting on the toilet and just having just these glass doors. But yeah, I have to admit it looks really nice. And there's something in this bathroom that I haven't really thought of using, but looks really nice actually, and that is like next to the bathtub there's this little stool where there's like bath things on, like a bath brush and some soaps and things like that, like on that little stool, and that actually looks really nice. I had never thought to use that myself, but I could definitely start doing things like that. And in general, I like the size of this bathroom as well. That's something that I tend to not have in my own builds. These sort of pretty big bathrooms that you have a lot of room to move around in and a lot of detail like this. Bathrooms is sort of the room that I tend to forget a little bit, I think, and just is an afterthought. I tend to create these really small ones just to sort of get them in there. But yeah, that's something that I really appreciate with the Sims 4 builders in general, that they really pay attention to all of the rooms in the house and just, yeah, pay attention to the bathrooms as well. That's something that I really should learn from, I think. All right, and we're moving on to the cute little kids' room and even more pillows. At this point, I was sort of resigned to my fate that I had to use all of these pillows. So, yeah, but it looks really nice. I think I just tend to not use them overly much in my own builds because, well, partly because it takes so long to put it together, but also because when the Sims sit in the furniture and there's like blankets and pillows and things in it, they just sort of sink through them, and it doesn't always look very good. So I think that's why I'm so reserved about using them. But yeah, I could definitely start to try to put in at least a few of them, because they make things look amazing, really. I have to confess, when they actually are in place and you've done the work, it really looks really great. I think that I'm a little bit adverse to having them as well, because I'm not a fan of pillows in these kinds of furniture in general in real life, because I just tend to not like having them behind my back when I sit in a chair like this, and I always end up either having them awkwardly on my lap or like throwing them in some other piece of furniture to get rid of them, and yeah, that's not really what pillows are meant to be used for. So yeah, that might be the reason why I'm so antagonistic towards them. But yeah, I actually really think that this is a cute kids room, and this is a little bit of an awkward angle to work with for a room, but I really appreciate how SimLicy created this space, and yeah, I really made a cute little kids room out of it. I think that I would have struggled a bit with the layout of this, but yeah, it turned out to look really nice. There was actually this really cute plush alligator on the floor, and I didn't really have anything like that, so I just went ahead and put in a what is it called? It's like a rocking horse, I think it's called, but it's not a horse, it's an elk. Yeah, so that's yeah, that was pretty cute, I think. And yeah, yet another bathroom. The funny thing about this one was that I ended up going with a Maxis bathtub that I just thought that, oh, this looks alright. And then as I kept watching the video, I realized that SimLicy actually put in a rubber duck on that exact same spot. So that was, yeah, a very lucky coincidence. that I actually ended up picking out the tub that had that rubber duck on the exact correct spot. So I was yeah, pretty happy about that, to say the least. And again, a really cute bathroom. Something else that I have noticed, mainly in the Sims 4 builds, I think, that people use in bathrooms specifically, is paintings on the wall. That's something that looks amazing. I think it looks really, really beautiful like that. Not something that I see a lot in real life, because I think in general it's a bit of a struggle to put in paintings on tile. that's probably the reason why. But I mean, once there are paintings on that wall in the bathroom, it looks really, really beautiful. So yeah, definitely something that I should take inspiration from as well. So we're getting out to the garage, and I'm pretty low on stamina at this point. I've been putting in so much clutter in this build. I was pretty sick and tired of it at this point. So yeah, I put in these shelf units and in the corners, just praying that there would be no clutter put on those. Of course there were. So I was like, nope, not doing that again. So I ended up just going with these bookshelves. Yeah, I got lazy at the end. Definitely. So yeah, if I would have gone all out trying to recreate this properly, I would have had to put in clutter on all of those shelves. Unfortunately, I didn't have any patience left for that. So yeah, but I think, I mean, it's not one of the main rooms anyway. It's just basically a garage that's used for gardening mainly, looks like. But I think the purpose of it is that you're supposed to be able to drive in with the cars there. It's definitely a squeeze. I'm not sure that the cars that I used could actually be driven into that house. Maybe the smaller one, but no, I don't think the bigger one. So yeah, I didn't go ahead with real garage doors for that, but only these just decorative bigger ones. Yeah, that looked a lot more similar to the Sims 4 build. All right, so this is the finished product, and yeah, I'm very happy about how it turned out. It was so fun to try out these different techniques. I mean, yeah, definitely go and check out SimLicy's video. She made such a beautiful house in The Sims 4, and I really loved the looks of it, the way it turned out in that game. And here are some screenshots of how the buildings compare. And I mean, layout-wise, I think I came really, really close to how it looked in The Sims 4. And it was actually really fun to work around with the sort of the limitations of the game and try to figure out how to make these compromises and actually make things work, despite it being a much older game and a much older building engine, or what to call it. So yeah, I was really pleased with the results of this, and yeah, there's a lot of things that I learned from this, definitely, and a lot of different things to take inspiration from in my future buildings in The Sims 2 as well. So yeah, I think this was a success, and I hope that you enjoyed watching this as well, that you think that it turned out all right. And yeah, I'm super excited to continue with this series and try to recreate even more buildings from The Sims 4. I think there's still a lot more to learn from this. So if there's any builds that you can think of at the top of your head, like it would be interesting to see how this one was recreated in The Sims 2, feel free to give me any recommendations that you might have. I would definitely enjoy even more challenges like this, and to see what else I can learn and recreate in The Sims 2. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and as I said, definitely check out the original video by SimLicy, and yeah, give her lots of love for this beautiful building. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time. Take care. Bye.